Hello, I'm John Gaudiosi. I've been a video game journalist for 30 years in the United States. This is my first time to Nordic Game and my first time to Malmo, so I'm looking forward to this 3-day event. And we're going to start by introducing our panel and jumping into some questions, and at the end we'll open it up for anybody in the audience to ask questions as well.
Yeah, I'll start, I guess. My name is Hakan. I am the CEO and co-owner of IO Interactive. I've been with the company for 12 years, and we just went independent, actually, almost exactly a year ago. I am the father of 2 small children, but I pride myself with still finding time between work and family life to play games, and which I'm extremely proud of. Yeah.
Hello. Martin Wahlund from Fatshark, co-founder and CEO. Love playing games as well. I guess most of you here, I think that's one of the strong points with this, the Nordic industry. Everybody loves to play games. Have a kid as well. Last game we did was Vermintide 2. We're doing co-op games in general, and multiplayer games.
I am Kjartan Emilsson, CEO and co-founder of Sólfar. I come from Iceland. I'm a physicist by background, but I've been in the game industry for 20 years now, all the time mostly in Iceland. Spent 12 years at CCP as a principal game designer, but in the last 3 years I've founded my own company and we're doing VR. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ben from Snowcastle in Norway, studio doing role-playing games, and also been heading, representing the Norwegian industry and Producers Association for the last 3 years.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Tero Virtala. I'm the CEO of Remedy Entertainment from Finland. We are 170 people, develop AAA console and PC games. Have now 2 big games in development and third one in early preparation. I have been in the industry for 16 years. I've now been at Remedy for 2 years. Before that I was CEO of Red Links, which Ubisoft then later bought, and I spent 3.5 years then at Ubisoft before becoming the CEO of Remedy.
Let's start by putting it out there. What do you feel defines video games that come from the Nordic region? Just for anyone to just jump into.
It's a bit hard. I guess there's so many games coming out. I think the variety and the quality would be the main thing. I think there's a high quality bar. Everybody here is passionate about quality. I think that's one that stands out for me. But the diversity in terms of platforms, we have huge hits in basically every single area. We have the huge mobile, we have the huge console hits, we have the AAA, we have the indie games, we have the VR games. I mean, we have basically all over the board. I think that's one key thing for me in the Nordic region. Quality and diversity. Mm-hmm. Even though we can be much more diverse, I hope we get more female game developers as well. So, but still.
Yeah, I think it's there's maybe the Nordic flair is somehow built up from historically from the companies that have been successful. Also, like in Finland, you have all the mobile background where the mobile gaming sort of pushed itself to the front, and that affected then the rest. So, for example, in Iceland, for us, it's really online games because that's the biggest game company is about online gaming. So I think all these specificities and the big companies that have like moved in, they sort of define this overall theme. But yes, otherwise I think it's quality and a strong indie scene as well, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely diversity, quality. But I think also one thing that we see a lot from the Nordic gaming companies is that even though there is a lot of diversity, there typically is also a certain uniqueness, sometimes even weirdness, but certain uniqueness that makes the games different, gives them a certain special flavor, and maybe it's the self-confidence on top of that the teams typically also have a strong belief, beyond the doubts, that they can also pull it off.
This ties in a little bit, but how have you seen the Nordic cultures influence the games that come out across all the different genres that we were just discussing?
I would say that, I mean, I think what's really defining us is that we are a small market. We can't do our games for the Nordics. It doesn't makes the number work usually, at least for the bigger games. So we need to be global straight away. And I think we're really good at adapting other type of influences from other and sort of do a good mix of that into new games. I would say that's. Then of course there are specific games that with heavy cultural influences, but I think we need to go global. So I think you see a lot of games have heavy influences from other parts of the world.
I think also that because of this social security network that we have in these countries, a lot of devs dare to do things that otherwise might be too scary. And that reflects in the type of more creative, artistic type of games that I think we see more of from this region than other places.
I also think that, in a way, I get this question quite a lot in Asia, in US, that how does the Nordic culture affect in your games? And people typically expect that it would be with the folklores and myths and the nature, and that's definitely not the case. But it's much more profound, much deeper, as was said, in a way, be it the kind of risk-taking possibilities because of the social welfare system or the international nature, as we are so small. And I think one thing that we easily take for granted that shows very clearly in all the cultures in the Nordic countries are, in a way, the shared values, the norms, how we behave, how we think, that we don't even necessarily think of. When I said earlier the uniqueness which we see, we have this tradition that in all the Nordic countries the respect for the individual has been really high, and we all have the permission to be who we are, to think how we think. And I think that gives a lot of diversity and uniqueness into our games. And we take it for granted, but you go to Asia, you go to even some other European countries, and there are things that you can't even think of, kind of like norms that would prohibit you from creating something that would be completely different. And I think this type of deeper meanings in our culture actually show in our games, even though we wouldn't think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed this as well. I was involved in building up a studio, CCP studio in Shanghai, and we also had another studio in the US. And there, you really sense the difference in culture in terms of even a studio within the same company. It was definitely like a challenge because we wanted obviously to replicate what we had in Iceland. And it was a challenge to replicate that in the other offices. And a lot of it had to do, for example, with maybe more lack of hierarchy in the kind of Nordic culture, which is much more imposed, for example, in the Chinese culture and as well in the US culture. So you had to, there are a lot of people that had to get accustomed to this kind of Nordic culture of working together. Which,
I recognize what my colleagues up here are saying. I think sustainability is also a key thing for me when I look at the Nordic developers. It's pretty impressive that we can reach with our games, that we can reach a global target group out there, and it's from my experience with a lot of the studios out there compared to Nordic region, I think we have a really good. It's not unusual that our employees are with us for 5, 10 years or something like that. So some of these things are obviously social security, but some of these things are also like sustainability, I believe, right? That both foreigners and Scandinavian talent, it's usually not like that people are burned out. We have a bit of a, I believe, different way of handling what we call crunch or whatnot, right? So I think Scandinavian companies have a good ability to keep talent, be that expats, foreign or internationally, which gives us that width and with the respect within the studios to give a good, balanced way of reaching both internationally and obviously Nordic regions.
Do you think the lack of hierarchy is affecting the creativity in a positive way?
The lack of
The lack of hierarchy in the Nordic games compared to the other countries, that it stimulates more creativity or not?
I think it definitely has its benefits. I think the hierarchy is better if you are going to push your project on time, probably, where it helps to having like somebody sort of like giving the beat. But the lack of hierarchy, I think, empowers the teams much more at a low level, and that creates stronger teams and I think stronger products in the end. So I think it's important.
I think it's funny you mentioned the lack of hierarchy as a norm. The way you ask. I think it's important. It's necessary with hierarchy. Right? I think it's a common misunderstanding that Scandinavians per default have no hierarchy. It's totally flat. I think the magic in there is something else. It's the respect that was mentioned before. It's the free communication that you can speak between layers. Yeah. That's more important than removing a hierarchy. Yeah. Right. So what I encourage in IO is that you don't have to go to your lead or producer to ask for permission to talk to this guy in this other department. Yeah. Actually, that's a big no-no, right? You are free to talk to everyone, but obviously when something needs to be executed on, you make sure your producers and everyone are in sync with that.
Absolutely.
So hierarchy, I think it's a huge misunderstanding. It's anarchy if you have no hierarchy at all. But how the culture evolves around that, and how the culture plays with hierarchy, I think that's the key for a lot of Scandinavian studios.
I think that's a really good point. That especially in the Nordics, but overall in our industry, I think most of the companies are evolving much faster towards a direction where the whole team is being involved, and in a way the professionalism and expertise of all the people is taken into account. But what I have seen in my 16 years, that you should in a way involve the whole team, and you should provide as much power as possible to the team. But unless you have the official hierarchy, kind of like who's responsible on what is kind of like different people's roles, it easily goes into the anarchy, and when it's very democratic, in a way, decisions do not get made. And I have seen that, for example, when a project leadership team is clearly defined, it typically makes the teams to make the decisions much faster. Maybe it is the psychological effect that, in a way, the team also then knows that they need to reach a conclusion. Unless they do it, someone else will make the decision. And people are so talented that they typically come up with these answers in a much better way than anyone in the management.
What impact have you guys seen the success of key studios in the Nordic region have on growing the ecosystem through startups and other video game offshoots?
I would say that there's a lot of good role models in terms of the big studios that have been leading the way and like increase the interest as well. But I would also talk about the ones that are not existing anymore, because they, at least in Stockholm, they have been super important, even in other parts of Sweden. Those, when there have been tough times, the credit crunch and so forth, the studios that have fostered a lot of talent and then they went into demise has forced new studios to grow up from these kind of like failed studios, but they weren't failures in fact. But I mean, obviously they helped a lot with building the ecosystem, at least in Sweden, I know. So I think we should both talk about the successful that's still here and also those who are actually not here anymore, because like studios like UDS, MUs, Green have fostered a lot of the ones that are out in the industry right now.
Yeah, I second that. Iceland is maybe a little bit special in that respect because it's so small. I sometimes make the analogy that Iceland is like a little like a bonsai tree. It has all the details, but it's just a very little tree. And there you can definitely trace the effect of companies that have gone up and then sort of like exploded spectacularly in the terms of the richness of the startups that follow. And there's even somebody that actually traced that very accurately, like the last 20 years. And it's like looking at the family tree of, here something happened, and then like 10 new companies came out of that, and then another exploded, and 10 new companies came out of that. So. That's a very, very important thing. And I also think there is a tendency for when that happens, and also when a company exits, so that people start to go somewhere else. It's kind of like a diaspora of people that go to companies all over the world, and they maintain a very strong kind of bond together, in social networks, etc. So it becomes like a global clan, so to speak. So. And then usually a lot of these people come back, and they come back with a lot of experience, and then the cycle goes on. So it's.
IO being mainly in the AAA space, it's a bit of a. I mean, there's a lot of really cool studios, a lot of indie, a lot of energy buzz flourishing in Denmark and Copenhagen. When we look at the AAA space, there's not that many, and that really impresses me with Sweden. When we just look at over here to our brotherly friends here in Sweden, it's pretty impressive how many players there are in AAA space, and that does inspire us. And just here in Malmö, there's massive, of course. In Stockholm, a lot of companies. There's in Göteborg and whatnot, right? So it's pretty inspiring that a country like ours that we can kind of mirror ourselves in are doing so well in the AAA space. So yeah, that is definitely something that inspires and also aspires us to do better.
And also this company helps out pulling investors, publishers into Sweden, which is obviously to Nordics in general. And I think that's,
Yeah. I think this business perspective is one important thing, but also kind of like having those some in a way big success stories. It has also had effect on the in a way softer and more generic things. When I, for example, look at Finland, in a way, Remedy in the early 2000s with Max Payne brought the idea of a game industry into the attention of the general public in Finland. Then in a way it was some curiosity and a small development for close to 10 years. And then I think it started to be a phase when a bigger breakthrough was needed in order for us to justify our place in the Finnish society. And all of a sudden there was Rovio with Angry Birds, and all of a sudden no one in the game industry needed to justify for their parents what will you do when you grow up. Then soon after there was Supercell, in a way the media attention that we got, in a way the public acceptance, the financing, in a way the international flow of talents, in a way. I think of course it's been the whole development of the ecosystem, but those few big success stories have played a big role in enabling this.
Yeah, and I think those are really important for the smaller countries like Denmark and Norway. Because I don't know how it is in Denmark, but it's really, really hard to find investors for the game industry in Norway. We're still stuck in the what are you going to do when you grow up phase. So Funcom just got an investment from, I think it was a Swedish bank, because that's where you need to go, and that's because of the big industry in Sweden. So we're being helped up by financing from Sweden and Finland. I think that's going to be applicable both to Denmark and Norway.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
Yeah,
Iceland.
Yeah, in Iceland.
Yeah, I definitely have the feeling that now. I mean, to my point before with turning independent for a year ago. I mean, obviously, I've been in this space for a very intense year. I feel. I actually feel there are a lot of opportunities. I actually feel, to my point before, with this kinship with the AAA space as well in the Nordic region, I feel that there is, eyes have been open to the quality that can be delivered impressively from this region. That investors, from IPOs to simple bank loans to co-publishing, whatever. There's a lot more awareness, I think, and eye for opportunities. So I think, although it's a big risky thing, AAA certainly, we also know it can pay off a great deal.
We have a lot of different games represented here on the stage from different countries, and I'd like to kind of go through and talk about some of the key aspects of why some of your games have had global success. Remedy.
I think it was earlier mentioned that yes, typically games coming from the Nordic region, they have the quality, which is of course really important, the fun factor, and everything works really well. But I think the other thing is also the special flavor, the uniqueness that there typically is. And it has been important to differentiate always. It's nowadays even more important, and in the future it's going to be even more important. The battle for audience attention, it's just going to intensify. You need to stand out somehow, and that's, I think, what we have succeeded in, being somehow different and still providing that with quality. And in a way, being different, it does require some innovation and some, in a way, open eyes. What we have done at Remedy often is that we have looked at the related industries, what's happening in movies, TVs, books. Are there some elements that are actually really interesting? And then thinking about, could we utilize those somehow in our games, or could we learn something? And those have been the inspirations, how in a way the early storytelling methods of Remedy were built, how from the Hong Kong action movies, how the bullet time mechanics were being created. And of course, there are then other ways how you enable your people to provide their innovation and their ideas. But for us, in a way, looking beyond games and thinking how those could be utilized has been one way of trying to build our uniqueness further.
Well, I would say, again, thinking globally, there are like big studios out there, and it's a hard competition. So as part of the Nordic region and developer here, I think it's not about just making things that is out there bigger or more expensive. Even if you do a very risky, expensive production, you try to look for this X, something that's different. That is also a bet, but you are battling big companies out there, right? So you want to find something that is original, that is different, and I guess you have to. And IO Interactive over the times have been successful with some of these risks that we've taken, and less successful with others. But I think the key to it now is also, I mentioned sustainability before, stick to it. It's not like a hit and run. And the cool thing is that the gaming space is moving into a more sustainable, you launch a product, you build that product, you make new game modes, you keep it live. That's more where things have moved to. And we did with our last Hitman game, we did something unconventional, something risky. I mean, the franchise was almost 20 years, right? And we made it episodic, and that was risky. There was a lot of commercial risk in that. But we stuck to it, and the initial confusion about the release model, we stuck to it, and over a year, 2 years, we supported it and expanded and added new content, and it turned into being a bit of a swan story for us, right? So it's not a hit and run. It's I think trying to find your unique angle to find your X compared to the competition out there, and think more sustainability than these big hit and run projects.
Yeah, I would say to understand the market is key, because it's like you think, like in the beginning when we started, we were happy for building a game because we were 12 people, and we were happy because 12 people, it was amazing effort from 12 people, but you need to realize that you're competing about everybody else, and it's not only by games, you compete about people's time. That's the key thing. I mean, you need to be able to think like, will somebody rather stay home a Friday evening and play this game than they go out on town with some friends? And you need to push that really hard. It's not enough to do good games. You need to do really great games, and you need to try to finding the fun in it. Also finding the fun. That's the toughest part. It's like the biggest difference from, I've been working in the finance industry before and stuff like that, and the building applications. You usually know when you're done. In a game, it's very hard to know exactly when you're done, because you could be flawless in terms of technical aspects. It could look really good, but it's super boring, and then it won't sell any copies. So, especially as we do, if we build our games with our own money, you need to be very sure when you release. So I usually say, like, for an independent, it's controlling your release date is super important. And it's very few that have the luxury to do that, because otherwise you could be locked into a certain publishers like Frame, where you have to release because they have different windows when you release. If you're an indie, you might run out of money, so you need to ship the game. That happened to us back in the days. So I think just find the right quality is the key for me, and also think about like who would play it, and also try the game during the development with people and see like, do people have fun with it, and be critical all the time. Yeah, I would say that's the key thing, and also try to not go running after the latest trend if you're not super fast, because that's usually, and I mean you can usually find spots that's good for you. You look at the company, how much money do you need to earn to make the company continue grow? Usually for the most companies, not like you don't need to sell 10 million copies. So you can go into a genre where nobody else is, or you can find the niche where sort of like where there's not many games right now. So I think a lot about how you position yourself, I would say as well.
Yeah, I think for me it's difficult maybe to isolate one thing through the years, but one of the things that has worked for us, and is probably more related to the culture of the group of designers that have been working together there, is go for the niche in terms of maybe being more ruthless and hardcore, make the games hard, and because there has been a tendency in games to go in the other direction, and it's often, criticize the very commercial aspects of these games, which are basically through analytics and all, sort of like make the user journey very easy and, like hand-holding. So we've sort of like gone a little bit on the other side, making the games hard, and, not listening too much to complaints from players when they say it's hard, because apparently they still play it because it's hard. So we are just going to maybe follow that aspect. It has worked for us, at least.
Yeah, I think our takeaway from our last production is at least that building on the community that we've made so far, and we had a Kickstarter that was successful, and we didn't quite tap into the power that is in that community. So going forward, we'll be looking at growing that community and nurturing it a lot more. I think that's going to be very helpful.
What are some of the challenges that remain for game studios in the Nordic region?
Finding good talent, I would say, is the biggest right now. I think there's a really great cooperation among the different companies. It's not like, as we compete on a global market, it's not like, most developers are really helping each other out. I think the only thing is like most companies need more employees. And I would say, then again, like we have a huge pool that untapped. With if we can get more female to start, female game developers start education and stuff like that. I think that's one that limits us right now, and we can get more. Yeah, I would say that's limit us. And also some people, like when we're recruiting, it could be if we are far north, people have a picture is kind of cold and dark, which is true. That could be hard to recruit some people from warmer places, I guess.
I think in Norway, it's the absolute biggest challenge is funding. It's really, really hard to finance a bigger production. There's only Funcom who has a AAA title budget, and the rest of the indies are getting really nice grants from the Norwegian Film Institute and other types of funds, but it's not enough to bridge the gap to a full proper release. So you end up doing staggered releases and not fully completed game launches, and it's just really inefficient. But at the same time, these young companies are now maturing and becoming more business focused and also easier to invest in. So I think it's changing.
Yes. So it's actually, I think it's a good point that was brought up, because the Nordic countries, there are similarities, but in the state where the industries are, they clearly differ between the countries. I think in Sweden we now have 4,000 people working in the game industry. In Finland, 3,000. Whereas in a way, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, kind of like not yet 1,000, maybe 500-600 people. The amount of companies is different, so I think in Finland and Sweden we definitely face the, in a way, I would say, the recruitment challenge. We have to develop further all the time in many aspects to be able to attract more and more people. Maybe the financing is a different question for some other countries. Overall, one thing that I would like to see when we look at 3 to 5 years in the future, if we look at the ecosystem on any, in a way, Nordic country in the game industry, we see a lot of life in the startup system. Then there are kind of like start to be in the second phase of the pyramid on the smaller scale companies. There start to be a lot of companies, even the medium size. But we don't yet have that many, in a way, really big giants that would be based here. And in order to build really relevant industries for our countries in the future, I think that's one of the steps that our industry hopefully takes.
Can you talk a little bit about the university education systems in the Nordic regions and how those are impacting things, as well as how you guys go about recruiting from other countries that come and work at your studios?
I think one of our best ways of recruiting is talented people in different countries marry Norwegians and then move to Norway, look for a job in the industry.
I think in Iceland there has been like a game development branch in the University of Reykjavik that has been set up in the last few years, and that has been really good for programmers and game designers. There's still a lack on the art and creative side, especially like technical art and stuff like that. And I think it's because those kind of talents do not get like a backup. Like if you're a programmer, for example, you can still work for another, a bank or whatever. So you can still, you're not reliant on that. But if you're like a technical artist, you pretty much need to be in a game, and if so there's no game industry to speak of, there are like maybe 2 or 3 positions, it's not going to develop really well. So I think it's a challenge there to get the people. But otherwise, yes, there has been some good initiatives in Iceland in like reducing costs and also favoring tax incentive for bringing people in, and that has worked well for us.
Yeah, it's been the same in Norway. We have a very rich oil industry that sucks up all the programmers. It's really hard to recruit programmers in general because they get really nice job offers with really high salaries. That is like way out of competition.
In Sweden, I think we have a lot of good game educations now, and I think also from the technical institutes we have traditionally recruited a lot of like programmers. One challenge we might have is to continue that, and like I think there's a lot of educations that's really good right now. So I think but the problem is like everybody's fighting for those who's coming out of these educations the last couple of years. So
I totally agree. I think I myself have a master's for 14 years ago from university that was pointing towards or focusing on game development. I think education, they are taken pretty seriously. I've been doing that for a while. There are some good schools here in Malmö as well. I think there's a great talent. The challenge is to find a good mix of senior staff and junior staff in your studio. And we have good experience or okay experience with getting expats to Copenhagen. It's a bit different, the social security, everything it's uber cool, but there's also this expensive city and the high taxes aspect. So if you're a single guy coming to Copenhagen as a senior programmer, it's difficult to keep on to them compared to expat coming with family and children. Then it's totally haven, right, in Scandinavia. So a lot of benefits there. So there's something there. But I think things are improving. I mean, it's just when was it? Yesterday, the day before Avalanche, saying they're coming to Malmö, right? I think again to my point before that there's this. I'm walking around and calling it mini Montreal now, right? This region, I think it's very, very interesting, and I'm not gonna drop the bomb here or anything, but I mean, who knows? Maybe IO will expand in Malmö at one time, right? Maybe we'll even announce it before next Nordic game. Who knows, right? But I find it extremely interesting, and I think this will. Both from the indie, small developers, this will benefit them, but it will also benefit the AAA brotherhood in Scandinavia.
Yeah. I think in a way, out of our employees, I think at the moment 45% come from outside of Finland. And it's really important to also take into account the need to have, in a way, enough senior level people in addition to the juniors. On a kind of like getting the juniors, government has been really supportive. And I think there are at the moment almost 15 different game development programs on different levels in Finland in universities. Some of the universities on top of that are doing world-leading research on areas that help us. So it's in a way the education has gone further a lot, but it's a mix of things that needs to be done to really enable us to find all the people we need.
Is it easy for you to get people from Asia and America in to work in the country? Because that's practically impossible.
Well, it's never easy. It's been a lot of work that has been done to make that happen. In a way, we need to have a big flow of applications. We need to contact all the time a lot of people to have. But I think we have succeeded quite well. And it's maybe another topic in a way what draws people to Nordic countries. We have been following that quite systematically. That what are the reasons why people are interested when they are applying, and then when they have been with us, what are the reasons why they stay?
I mean, I agree. I mean, it's not impossible. There are good opportunities. It's just that the world we live in today. Puts a few impediments in there as well, right? It's a risk, I would say, right? There's relocating expats from the US and whatnot, and if they have family and all that, there's a lot of consideration to be done. There's expenses there. There's biometric data. It takes months, right? Just to get the papers and whatnot done. So I think it's more like It's more like the risk, and you're also looking inwards, saying how do they flourish? How do they, in the culture here in Scandinavia? And a lot of them are successfully, working out successfully, right? But I think it's also, if you look at their point of view, if they look at a country and they look and say, okay, there's one AAA studio. I'm a AAA senior developer. There's one studio. If I move my family over there and it doesn't work out, where do I go, right? And again, I know I'm banging the same drum. Again, if there's other studios around and there's some flexibility, just 30 kilometers away from this studio to this, then you create this ecosystem for these people to be more less nervous about making a move like that, and that's going to be the benefit, the synergy between the studios in Scandinavia. And I think that's a part of getting even more senior talent to kind of help our new blood from universities to up their game as well, and that will give the international angle that will help us do games with international angle for the global market.
I do want to just pause for a minute to see if we do have questions from the audience so we get to them. And I think they're going to have a mic for you.
Hello.
Hello, Per.
Good job. I'm Per Strömbäck. I work for the Swedish Association. So thanks for saying such nice words about Sweden. That helps my bragging. But my question is, so much growth and so many new companies started. Where does it end? Is there a stop to the progress?
There will always be ups and downs, obviously. I mean, all of us that's been here for 10, 15 years knows that. But I think like more and more people play games now than ever. So it's a really fascinating time to be in the game industry. So I don't think it's stop. Then, of course, it will be credit crunches in the future. There will be ups and downs in valuations and stuff. But people will play games.
I think stop is. I mean, the gaming industry is growing, right? It's if you read up on how big the potential is and how much is growing and the estimates of how big it's going to be in the future, it is a thing and it's only going to grow in the future. And as a Nordic industry and region, I think we're doing all right.
Yeah, we just started for sure.
And I think we should definitely not be holding back or sitting in the back seat here. There are a lot of opportunities and funding. It is a thing, but I think it will improve as the synergies, as the impact of the Nordic is going to be clearer and clearer, which I believe is going to be in the future. So no stopping.
I mean, if you look at the long term, if like more and more jobs goes away to AI, so people need to have fun. So I mean, that will be the main thing to provide fun for people. So I guess games will be even bigger if you're looking at the really long-term perspective. So,
good point.
Yes, hello. My name is Malte. I heard a lot about quality today, and I was wondering if you would have talked so much about quality 5 years ago. So my question is, quality is itself a quite diverse notion. So do you actually agree on what quality is, or do you have among each other different ideas about what quality actually is or should be?
Good question. I think I talked a lot about quality, but I mean, like in quality, that's you enlighten someone's life because they have fun with your game. It doesn't necessarily need. Usually, it's like less bugs and stuff like that. But I would say quality in this sense is like having something that's people feel you put effort in, and it's fun to play, and it's a high value thing. People get value from buying your game or like buying stuff in your game.
I think when we talk about quality up here, there are obviously different approaches to that. But I think there's something about a good craftsmanship, right? In the Nordic region, we are known for having a lot of engines, like engine with names that people know in the global space. That means that we actually care about the tools we use for making games. It seems like, I'm not gonna mention some other games out there, but in the international market, there's like, oh, this is a buggy game. Right, of course, there can be cases where you have to push out something in early stage, but then you call it for what it is. But I think generally, when a finished game is released from the Nordic region, you can expect that it's not, it's a good craftsmanship, and you can maybe also look at generally on, Nordic quality or Nordic conscious about what you produce, to consumers, be that on the furniture side or other stuff we do. So there's some kind of a Nordic conscious, Nordic responsibility into the products that we do, and quality can also be, as mentioned a few times before, trying something different, trying to go the other direction than the big masses, taking some risks, be that
Emotional
difficulty
quality.
or be that how you deliver the game or whatnot. That is out of necessity as well,
Yeah.
but it also gives a flavor to what we do, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a very relevant question because internally we are not typically discussing about quality as a meter as per se, as it is such a vague term. If we were in a software industry, it would be easy to say that this is the design and these are the boxes you need to tick and do the functions work as they should. That's only one part of our industry, and then we have the fun factor. Is it fun? Does it feel fun? Kind of like what do the players think? And those in a way functionalities and fun factor are two really important things that we are considering in our games.
Hi, my name is Timothy. There's been a kind of a split in direction between larger companies now in the game industry, with esports being a thing and competitive gaming along with hardcore games, sort of what Hakan talked about with direction. How does this affect you guys? I know you're on a higher level of the companies, but do you feel the impact of these different directions? Do they impact the decision making of your studios a lot?
Yeah, I can just shortly say that in a way, if we look back in a way 10, 15 years, there's always been something new, something big, and people often easily start considering very black and white that is this going to be the future and does it actually make the other parts irrelevant? We see that our industry is starting to be so big and the amount of players out there, the amount is so huge and it's just growing. We are going to see even more diverse gaming industry in the future, and there are going to be so many segments that are changing all the time. It provides in a way different type of opportunities. Trying to predict any single one of these with so many change drivers in play, it's going to be really difficult. So in a way, I would say that the best strategy for many of us is going to be think about where you are really strong, what you are passionate about, what you can do really well, and how you could make that bit differently than what others are doing. And I think the likelihood for success with our talent is good.
I think also I think we're seeing this trend how games are becoming a social experience, not only within the game mechanics, but as a shared social experience of playing games and being together, playing games, watching others playing games, etc. I think this is just like a fundamental shift in how people socialize, and games are just being incorporated in that with the various tools that are out there, you know, Twitch, Discord, and everything. So I think we will see more and more of that.
Yeah, I think esports, for example, is not eating off the pie of what we can do. It's adding to it, so it's giving us more opportunities to be creative and make new type of games. So less challenge, more an opportunity.
Cool. Well, we're out of time now, so I want to thank all the panelists for speaking, and that's a wrap.
Thank you.